There are a variety of tools you can use to build reports, targeted at different kinds of users. The report designer is provided by the Report Server Project template, and its related wizard template in SQL Server Data Tools in Visual Studio. The designer is geared for developers and IT professionals with a deep understanding of data, who will create comprehensive reports for end users. The report designer exposes the full range of report development features. This is a component that used to be part of the Business Intelligence Development Studio, or BIDS, which was included with earlier versions of SQL Server. SQL Server Data Tools has completely supplanted BIDS in SQL Server 2012 and later. All right, another tool is Report Builder. This is an end-user tool usable for creating ad hoc reports, but with a full range of reporting services features that developers can use to create managed reports. This tool is simple enough to be usable by users who don't have SQL query skills but need access to the information within data stores. The user interface is going to be familiar to anyone who uses Office 2010 and later, complete with the Office-style ribbon interface. Report Builder isn't quite as powerful as Report Designer, but provides most report features needed by most end users. Another option is Power View. This is a component of using reporting services in SharePoint integrated mode. It's a Silverlight application for ad hoc report creation within a web browser, and it supports only tabular data. It uses a design process that's interactive and visual, making it more of a data exploration tool than a traditional report designer. You also have access to a Reporting Services API. This provides a programming interface so that you can create your own report building tools or automatically generate reports from custom applications. Generally, you'll write a tool or application that outputs a report definition language or RDL file, which is the same output as the other built-in report building tools. Now, why does Microsoft need so many report building tools? Setting aside Power View, which is specific to SharePoint integration, and the API, it has two fully functional tools. It has a fine, fully featured Report Designer built into SQL Server Data Tools. Report Designer supports all the report layout and expression language features in reporting services. It supports rich options for connecting to and using data. Includes various project templates to speed up the start of a new report project, and it helps you write code, and has all the goodness that being based on the Visual Studio development environment gives you. And therein lies the problem. Report Designer is a complex tool that can take a lot of time to learn, with far too many options for a casual report developer to learn. Visual Studio can be overwhelming if all a user wants to do is get in, create an ad hoc report to get specific information necessary to get a job done, and get back to that job. Report Designer is just too much tool for casual ad hoc report building. Report Builder, in contrast, is a reasonably simple and straightforward tool that has an interface similar to one that is familiar to most business workers, Office 2007 and later. The ribbon interface in Office was a bit daunting when it first came out, particularly for people using older versions of Office, and in fact, Report Builder 1.0. But the latest version of Report Builder makes report building about as easy as it can be while exposing all the powerful features of reports. And users can write their own queries against data stores if they're inclined and savvy enough, or craft simple data sets from a report model, or use existing shared data sets. Because it's focused on just report building, the interface is simpler than Visual Studio's by far. Now, professional report developers and data wonks will probably want to stay with Report Designer for report development. But for end users, Report Builder is a far better, more manageable option. Probably the best way to learn how to develop reports using reporting services is to jump right in and create a simple report. And a good approach for doing that is to use the Report Server Project Wizard from within the SQL Server Data Tools. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a simple report using employee data from the AdventureWorks LT 2012 sample database. You can launch the wizard in a couple of different ways, but the most direct is to use the Report Server Project Wizard template in the New Project dialog box of SQL Server Data Tools. Alright, so the first thing I'll do is I'll fire up Visual Studio, where I have Data Tools installed, and I'll come over here to New Project, and come down here to Reporting Services. Now, when you try this at home, if you don't have this business intelligence set of templates here, it means that you may have data tools installed, but you haven't installed the business intelligence version of the SQL Server data tools. You have to install both. Okay, so I have a couple of different options here. One is just an empty report server project. So there you're starting with a blank slate. But I'm going to do this report server project wizard. This is a throwaway project, so I'll just accept the default location. But I'll give this the name Report Wizard. And then, like any other Visual Studio project, there's various other options for putting in different locations, creating a directory for the solution, adding to source control, and so forth. All right, I'll click on OK. And after a couple moments, it fires off the Report Wizard. All right, so the first thing you get is this welcome screen. Gives you a basic idea of the steps that are involved in what's going to happen in order to create the wizard. And you have the option of not showing that page again. So I'll move on from that. And then the next thing you'll see is the Select the Data Source screen. In this case, I'll name the data source AdventureWorks Employees. And I'm going to be using SQL Server. That's a SQL Server database. And then I'm going to enter a connection string. So I'll put in the data source is equal to local in this case. You can certainly use a machine name if you prefer. And the initial catalog I'll set equal to AdventureWorks LT 2012. Okay, in this case I need a fairly simple kind of connection string. If I wanted to use a graphic designer, I could click on the edit button and that'll give me the usual dialog box where you can select the server and the various parameters for the connection string. And in fact, that option is particularly useful if you need to do anything other than the default Windows integrated authentication. But that's what I'm using in this case. That works fine for me with my permissions on this local machine. All right, I'll go ahead and click Next. And now, in the Design the Query screen, I'm going to enter a select statement that accesses all of the data from the customer table. Very simple kind of example here. So I'll do a select star from sales LT. All of the tables within that database are in the sales LT namespace and customer. Okay. And then I can also use the query builder that gives me a graphical interface to build more complex queries. In this case, it's a very simple query, so it's easier for me to just type in. But if you can do a lot of joins, do a lot of complex things, then the query builder is often the easier way to go. And you can certainly also paste in a query that you've built using another tool, such as Management Studio. I'll click Next. And now here in the Select the Report Type, you can select the type of report that you want to create, which can be either a tabular or a matrix report type. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to leave the default set to tabular, but I could certainly select matrix and do more complex things. But I just want a table of the result. And I'll click on Next to continue on. And that takes us to Design the Table page. Here you can select the fields from the customer table that you want to display in the report. And so the easiest way to do this is to just select various fields and hold down the Control key. So in this case, I'm going to select the first name. I'll hold down the Control key and select last name and company name and email address and phone fields. All right, in this case, I want to add those to the Details section of the report. Now for this particular simple report, I'm not going to add any fields to the page or group sections of the report because I'm not going to group by anything meaningful within this report. But if you had a more complex query, such as categories and products within those categories and maybe orders that involve those products, then you can group them by various parameters. And you can also identify different page fields as well. But again, for this simple report, that's all I need to do. And I'll click on Next. Now here in the Choose the Table Style screen, you can select the colors to use for the report. So these are some predefined appearances, basically skins if you want to think about them in that way, for the report. So the default is slate, you have forest, has a little bit more green, corporate, blue is apparently a corporate color. I guess that makes sense. Microsoft, one of their prominent colors is blue, bold, ocean, and generic. So in this case, in honor of Microsoft, I'm going to select corporate and click on Next. And here we are in the Choose the Deployment Location screen. This is where you can specify the report server that the report is going to be published to and its version, as well as the deployment folder. What I'm going to do here is leave all these default settings as they are. But what's interesting here is that the options for the report server version are SQL Server 2008 and SQL Server 2008 R2 or later. I happen to be running this in SQL Server 2012. Same thing applies to 2014. So I'm going to leave that default selection. But if I'm going to deploy this to a SQL Server 2008 instance, then I would select that option instead. And that way, the report features are going to conform to what is available within reporting services in those versions of SQL Server. Okay. Report server, I can deploy it locally, which is what I'm going to do, or to some remote server. And in this case, the deployment folder is going to be Report Wizard. And then another option here is that you can click on the Detect Version. And if I click that, it would take a few moments, and it would detect which version of SQL Server, the instance of SQL Server that I'm pointing to by using this report server instance. And in this case, it's going to come up with the same selection. But if you're not sure what version of SQL Server a particular report server is pointing to, you can use that button and it'll help you do the right thing. Okay, click on Next, and there we have the Completing the Wizard. Alright, so this gives a summary of all of the selections, and you can give the report a name. So I'm going to name this Customer Contact List. Okay. And I'll also click the Preview Report checkbox there, so I can preview the report before we deploy it. Finally, I'll click on Finish, and it'll whir and click and clank for a few moments. Connect to the data source, and with any kind of luck, give us a preview of that finished report. And there we have it. So as you can see, with very little work to this point, I have a pretty functional report. It lists all of our customers and some contact information for them, along with the company name and so forth. And as you can see, it scrolls down and displays a fair amount of data. Again, a very simple report. There's no sorting or grouping or things like that. But you can certainly add those kinds of features now that we have a starting report within the Report Designer.